Hey everybody, Chris Lano here behind the camera today, and we got Paul Bertucci, our product manager here. We're out in IPD's shop and we are getting ready to do a timing belt overview on the VEA 2-liter engines. Now, some things might be a little bit different because the VEA 2-liter came in the P3 models, right Paul? And it also came in the P5 Spa chassis, which is like on this XC90 that we are working on today. But we are gonna do a timing belt overview. The timing belt overview is going to show the people, the do-it-yourselfers that are looking to dive into this job, what they're going to run into, what they're going to tackle, some of the special tools you're going to need. Forgive us if this video is not exactly perfect step by step. It is an overview. We're going to do as much as we can to give you as much information about what you'll need to do and what you're going to run into while doing a timing belt. So, Paul, we've done all the research, we've looked at it, we're getting ready to dive in and we will capture it for you. But Paul, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about this stuff over here on the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a job we kind of want to knock the mystique off of, so to speak. We were a little scared starting to look at these cars for the first time, but diving into it, a timing belt is really a timing belt. And on these, compared to the earlier 5-cylinder wide engines, for example, if anything, the job is even easier. You have the electric water pump, so the timing belt is no longer driving the water pump. You need to remove the accessory belt, remove the timing belt, and put on a new timing belt and tensioner components.
Paul, that's a great explanation of what we're doing here, because we are uncovering the mystique of this job, because we want people to be able to feel comfortable. We know that these cars have been around long enough now, but the labor is pretty intensive and they still charge quite a bit of money at the independents that we've done research on and at the Volvo dealer level. So we think that people are going to get more comfortable doing this here, so that's why we're knocking out this video. Paul, let's go and talk about the timing belt kit that we have here. I want to dive into that.
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, the timing belt drive on these cars no longer includes anything around the water pump because these VEA engines use an electric water pump. That's nowhere near the timing belt drive. So what we get in the box from Volvo is everything we need for the timing belt job, and everything we need is not a whole lot. We get a new belt, we get some new bolts, because a lot of these are single-use torque to yield. You want to make sure those are the correct tension. We get an idler, and we get a tensioner, and the classic Volvo timing belt interval sticker. Yeah, it's all just a couple of fasteners, new belt, and new tensioners.
What's really cool is that we have the Volvo OEM belts, and obviously Paul, if he does his job right, we have really cool parts on the website, sometimes even the original manufacturer, the supplier for the timing belts and the kits on these cars. So you can find aftermarket versions on our website as well, including the OEM versions. So we're gonna get to it. This is a timing belt kit, basically that comes with, we sell this on our website. Go ahead and talk about some of the individual pieces in this kit, you know, that we're gonna dive into here, Paul.
Absolutely. Like past Volvo engines we're familiar with, Volvo puts the accessory drive belt and harmonic balancer in front of the timing belt, kind of like a sandwich, layers I suppose. You've got the harmonic balancer and the accessory drive on the outside and then the timing belt underneath. This toolkit includes counter holds and tools for removing the harmonic balancer, and then once you've got that off, it includes a cam lock tool for holding the intake and exhaust cams in place while you remove the timing belt and put on a new one.
Great. And we're going to show you how that works. We do sell this on our website. This is the investment piece aside from the parts. There's other ways that do-it-yourselfers, I'm sure, can figure out how to mimic this or to lock the cams in place, but this is the exact toolkit that you would need to use that's efficient and works exactly like intended to, that it was made, you know, to lock this stuff up and allow you to get your timing belt off safe. So we're going to show how that gets together here as we do an overview. So you ready to get to it?
Absolutely.
All right, let's go.
Just like all the older Volvo engines we're used to working on, your 5-cylinder wide engines is what I'm thinking of and what I'm most familiar with. This is not that different in that regard. All of the accessory belt drive and timing belt drive stuff lives over on this side of the motor, and we are going to have to pull this engine cover and remove this engine mount at one point in order to be able to get in there and service it. We'll be going in primarily through the top here and down through the wheel here. So when you're doing this job, you want to make sure when you're getting under here that you have the car securely supported, that you can get the wheel off, and that you can get in behind the fender liner. Different models, T5, T6 versus T8, like whether it's supercharged, turbocharged, or supercharged and turbocharged hybrid, may have slightly different belt drives. That's what's primarily different on these models. The timing belt setup is the same on all of them, but depending which engine you have, what's driven by the belt and what accessories live on the belt drive may be a little bit different. For this job, the engine mount goes through the middle of the belt drive on the side of the engine. Volvo has a special engine hoist that fits these VEAs to support the engine from above while you remove the engine mount, but you can just as easily support the engine from underneath as long as you're careful about it. For our users at home who are going to be doing this job in their driveway, that probably is even easier. You just have to be careful where you support it. Under here on these VEAs, we have a motor mount here. We'll be putting a block of wood and a jack underneath, and then undoing that upper motor mount in order to support it securely. This block of wood is here both to spread the load out a little bit and to keep the nearby oil pan nice and safe. We want now access to the harmonic balancer and the belt drive on the side of the motor, and like with past Volvos, primary access for that is going to be through the fender liner, through here. So what we're going to want to do next is lower the car, support the motor, pull the wheel off, and pull the fender liner off.
Okay, so now the next step is removing this inner fender liner. There's going to be some Torx that hold the mud flap and the fender liner in here, and there's going to be a few, I believe 10 millimeters that just go around the inside of the wheel well here. And once we get all of this out of the way, we can pull this entire plastic fender liner
If you've ever done a timing belt on a P1 or a P2, this is pretty broadly similar to how that goes. And especially on a P1, how we have the car slightly lifted up in the air and how we have the jack supporting the motor so that we can play with the motor's position as needed is very similar. This may differ depending what trim package you have, whether you have mud flaps or not, but we're finding it's mostly a bunch of little T25s. There are 1 or 2 10mm plastic nuts on the inner fender liner, and in a few places there are these push rivets. You can press the center of them in like that, and then you should be able to pull the fender liner off without damaging the rivets underneath. Okay, I've got these last upper 2 little push rivets pressed in and detached. Working from the inside of the fender, gradually peeling it away, you can then pull it down and out. We've got, under the main fender liner, a secondary little shield here. Presses onto a stud up there with a little clip down here. Just pull that out of the way. It uses all the same fasteners as the main fender liner.
And she's out.
Now we have access to the harmonic balancer and the accessory belt. Once you've got your engine fully supported from underneath, we can start removing the upper torque mount and the motor mount right underneath.
All right, just using common hand tools, we're going to go ahead and remove this upper stabilizer mount, and then we'll go ahead and get to the right side motor mount here once this is out of the way. Just a few bolts and the upper end stabilizer mount is gone. Give you more access to the passenger side engine mount here. Okay, this engine mount actually has got a ground on it that we're removing with a 10mm. Just set that aside for now. Remember where all the bolts go.
I'm leaving them in the bracket.
Perfect.
Because I probably won't remember. Alright, we've got the engine mount bracket and the torque mount that was up here removed. The engine mount is down on the side here, bolted to the frame rail in 2 places. With all the brackets out, we can remove this engine mount. And that gives us nice access to the belt drive underneath. I mentioned before that the accessory belt drive might look a little different depending on which motor you're working on. This particular car is a T8, and because it's a hybrid, the AC compressor is electrically powered, so the belt drive is pretty simple. On much later cars, the T8s from 2023 and up, there's no accessory belt drive at all. On this car though, we do have a very simple belt drive that we need to remove before we can get to the timing belt underneath. Alright, we're going to remove the belt next, which means we have to loosen the tensioner. We're going to use a little tiny lock pin in the tensioner. There's a small ear on the back of it, which you can probably reach down and feel. I've just got a standard 15mm box end wrench on it. We're gonna loosen tension from the tensioner all the way down like that. And we're gonna reach in with our little lock pin, which is just a 3mm pin of some sort. Feel for that hole, put it in, and release tension. Now the tensioner is pinned in place, and we can remove the bolt, and then the tensioner and the idler up here. It's super simple belt drive on this T8. The only thing this belt drives is the supercharger up high.
Right, so just make sure and look at the routing, because on other models there might be another accessory up front, and you'll have to make sure and remember the routing or look it up. But on this particular model, like Paul said, it's just the one. So the belt's off, Serpentine belt.
Now we can access tensioner down here and the idler up here.
You're starting with the idler there, Paul?
Yeah, it's up high, it's easy.
Okay. The bolt's on the side of it, which means that the idler is on a little bracket. So, yeah, there you go. It's got 2 bolts on the idler. Alright, we'll get those out and pull the idler off. Okay, we're looking at the tensioner down there, and it's probably got a couple bolts as well, which we're going to hit. We just took off the idler pulley right up above it with the 2 bolts. So just getting you guys a visual there. Paul will start to remove the 2 bolts that we can visually see and pull that tensioner off. Okay, go ahead and start pulling it out. And there's the accessory drive tensioner.
We've got the tensioner and the belt drive all the way out of the way. If you are replacing your tensioner, accessory belt, or idler, this is as far as you need to go. But if you're doing the timing belt, we need to get down under the car now and lower the motor a little bit so we can get the harmonic balancer off. And the timing belt lives behind that and behind this cover here. Our jack under here is supporting the motor in place of the motor mount that we removed from up top. Here you can see the bolts on our harmonic balancer, and we need to lower the motor slightly just so that we can access them.
I lowered it. How did it go?
Good. You can go a little further.
A little bit further?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me what. Whoa.
Just a hair more. That's probably enough.
Okay.
Our timing belt toolkit has the counterholds needed to remove the crankshaft harmonic balancer in it. You can see a diagram up here of what we're going to do on the engine. We have our counterhold piece here that will hold it steady while we undo the triple square bits that are holding the harmonic balancer onto the crankshaft. And
Right.
then up here, this piece bolts into where the engine mount bracket was, and it holds the counterhold in place.
It's actually quite silly. Paul and I were laughing about how this thing right here, that upper bracket bolts to these 2 bolts here, right there. And then underneath the car, this is where the big long end bolts right up to the harmonic balancer, and then you're able to pull those bolts out once the holder is in place. As Paul was configuring the harmonic balancer tool that we sell, it definitely interferes with the front timing cover, so we need to pull that off first. We actually initially thought that this came off afterwards, but it's got a Torx right there, and we'll remove that, and then you should be able to take this plastic cover right off. Okay, there was 2 Torx bolts, T27s.
We've got a clip up here, a clip up here, and a third hidden clip around the back down there.
Yep, and now you should be able to pull the cover right off. Perfect. Out. Okay, once we got that off, now we've got a visual of the actual timing belt. Now with the timing cover out of the way, this tool threads into place just right.
We have the lower counter hold perfectly in one of the slots on this tool, but you may find you need to rock the motor back and forth slightly in order to line it up, but the motor should spin over pretty easily. You can just move the tool back and forth to get the perfect alignment.
We'll get a good shot of this once you get your hands out of there, and we'll show how this thing's set up once you screw down the two main mounting bolts for the tool.
Those don't need to go in super tight. It's just there to keep the counter
rocking.
hold from moving around.
And then you can see Bud wiggle the counter hold a little bit down below. Yep. So he's putting it down on the balance, or the harmonic balancer down below, and then it just comes and slots right up through this notch in the bracket to keep it from moving back and forth. Perfect. Good.
Our counter tool hold is on the end of the harmonic balancer there, and within the notches up top to keep it from moving around. Make sure you get one hand on it to keep it from falling off, and the notch up top will do the rest as you loosen these 4 triple square bolts. Before you remove all of the little 10mm triple squares, leave at least 2 in. We'll need them as a counter hold for the single 15mm bolt in the middle. Yep. We'll do the same thing that we did with our triple squares. Keep that counter hold in place while you loosen. We've got that center bolt loosened. Getting that all the way out. Took a pretty good amount of force to get that out. You may need to enlist a helper for that. But with that out, we can remove the last 2 triple squares.
So while Paul's finishing pulling out the rest of the bolts on the harmonic balancer, just note that the Volvo OEM Genuine kit comes with new hardware. It's got the one in the center of the harmonic balancer and the 4 for the actual pulley. Triple squares there. So, and as you can see, as we're doing the job, we're keeping all the parts together that came off the car, all the related bolts and stuff like that, with each component, so that way it's easier to organize and remember as you put them back.
We're lucky here on the West Coast. Yeah, there's no rust or corrosion holding this in place. As soon as we got it loose, we have a nice wiggle already. In order to get all the bolts, we had to lower it pretty far down. The harmonic balancer is close to the subframe, so we're going to raise it back up a little bit to give ourselves the room to pull this balancer off.
Go and get her off.
Is that high enough?
Yeah, that's plenty high.
Let's give it a try.
It came off, no problem. Great. Here we go. Let's look at that. Nice job.
If you can hear my disembodied voice, then you're looking down at the alignment notch on the crank there. You can see there's a little tab sticking up from the plastic cover there that lines up with the notch on the cam gear. We want to line those 2 notches up. We'll paint pen them later once it's lined up for you, but before we can do that, we need to turn the engine over by hand to get it into the right position. We're going to take our bolt that we removed from the harmonic balancer before, put a socket onto the end of it to stand it out a little bit from the crank, and turn the motor over. I've just got our old crank pulley central bolt on top of a socket there. I've snugged it down, and we can turn it clockwise until we get all our marks lined up.
And we will paint pen them once we're done so you can see where the marks are. Paul can visually see that now, and we'll turn it until it gets lined up.
Alright, I've got a headlamp on. We're going to get back into underneath the car and look at the crank again. We showed you where the alignment mark was, and just to make it a little clearer for ourselves, we're going to put a little dab of paint both on the tab, there, and if I can reach it, the matching little tab on our black cover there.
Yep.
And that's mainly a future reference for ourselves. We'll get up top and line everything up, but lining everything up doesn't involve any marks up top, and we're about to get into that. Traditionally, for one of these, there would be marks here. You would line up the marks on the cams with marks on the cover. With those lined up and with the marks down low lined up, you could remove the belt, put a new belt on, spin it all over, and make sure your marks match. With this, it's a little bit different. Volvo's designed this tool to lock the cams in place so that you don't have to mark anything. We've got little alignment dowels here that stick into matching depressions on each cam. These drop in. Have to give it a little spin.
You line up the dowels. Cool.
Our engine mount bolts here now serve double duty. This long tool here holds the locking tool in place.
Basically, as you thread that in, it's just pushing a big block up against the front of this entire tool, holding it up against the cams, which is fantastic. See?
Then we tighten these nuts down and our cams don't move and we can safely remove the belt. All right, we've double checked our mark down here is all nice and lined up, and we've locked our cams up top. Now comes the fun part. I'm removing the one bolt that holds the timing belt tensioner first.
And this timing belt tensioner was included in the genuine Volvo kit,
along with a new idler up here.
Right.
And remember, these engines have electric water pumps, so there's no water pump or anything else to worry about here.
Okay, now you've undone the tensioner, so you're pulling that out.
One bolt through the middle there.
Perfect. Nice. Time to replace that.
And a matching one for our idler here.
Which they're basically right on top of each other. The tensioner sits right below it, and the idler is right on top. One bolt each, and they should pop right off of the belt. Nice. And he pulled the puller or the idler out. Nice.
We've got the belt all nice and loose now with the tensioner and the idler pulled. Got all our marks, got everything locked down. Last but not least, the belt itself.
Yep. And the belt is out. Nice job. Timing belt ready to be replaced.
Definitely ready. We have the old belt off, but before we put the tensioner, idler, and new belt on, we want to triple and quadruple check our alignment down here. You can see all the way down, we've got our little notch on the cam gear and the corresponding standing proud notch on the front main cover there. We'll get back underneath, stare at it from the side on, make sure those are correct, and rock it back and forth a little bit if it's not.
Right, and we don't need to worry about the cam gears up top here because those are locked in place. So basically, right, Paul, it's just getting the crank in the right orientation that it was before you took the, right when you took the belt off.
These cinch down means they haven't moved at all, so we just need to make sure the bottom is perfectly aligned with where we had it when we took everything off. That the mark is like slightly forward of... Yeah.
Okay, so Paul, if the marks, because we made paint pen marks on there before you took the timing belt off, now we're forward about one tooth and you want to take it back, show us the piece in the kit from our timing belt tool kit that you're going to use to put and be able to rock that back on the crank just a hair. So you're going to thread that piece back in.
Yeah, this piece here is part of what's used to remove the timing cam gear if you needed to pull it for, say, a front main leak.
Right.
But this also has some nice flats on it where you can turn it over by hand.
Right.
I'm going to use 2 of our old harmonic balancer bolts, thread that into the crank pulley there.
And then grab a hold of it with the
wrench. And I'll be able to rock it back, it looks like a degree or two, to line our marks up perfectly again.
All right, looks like you rocked it back about a degree where it's all lined up again. And now you're unthreading the bolts, right, for the tool. Perfect.
These are, again, the old bolts.
Right.
Both the genuine Volvo and the OES Contitech kits we sell come with new harmonic balancer bolts.
Right. Okay. That looks good. It's all lined up.
Okay. We're doing the tensioners before we put the belt on. We've got our idler here, which goes onto this little boss on that bracket. And then we will put the new tensioner in right next to it. It's incredibly important, that little grenade pin that's in the tensioner, you don't want to pull just yet. That's one of the last things we do here.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, while Paul's tightening down the actual idler pulley, here is the tensioner, and Paul can show you the little tiny piece. The pin comes in it, it's ready to go. So once you get that installed on the vehicle, and then you get the belt on and in position, that's when you would actually pull that out of.
We've got a little tiny alignment notch here that fits into a square cutout on our bracket there.
Mm-hmm.
There's our tab. Now bolt started. I'm sure you have a great view of my arms right now.
Yeah, it's fine. Once you get done, just pull out and I'll show both of those pieces. The tensioner and the idler is in position, and all Paul has to do now is torque them down.
18 pound-feet or 24 Newton meters.
18 pound-feet on both. One is a 10 and one is a 13. The idler is a 10 and the tensioner is a 13. Okay. Torque wrench, got it. Even though each bolt calls for around 18 foot-pounds, we've got the 10 on the idler and the 13 on the tensioner. One thing that Paul and I want to make sure and note, you guys, is that you can go ahead and tighten down the idler pulley all the way, but you only want to snug tight the tensioner before putting the belt on. And Paul can explain why here.
Like on previous engines, there's some temperature adjustment built into this.
Right.
The manual calls for doing this at room temperature, 20 to 25 Celsius, or around 70 degrees, you know, nice and comfy. Components enlarge and contract with temperature changes, so this calls for doing the timing belt at a certain temperature. Where we have the pin in right here lines up with a tiny little fork, and if you've ever done a timing belt on a 5-cylinder, this tensioner works in exactly the same way. We are going to hand snug the tensioner bolt here, but there's an Allen in the tensioner itself. We'll get the belt on, make sure the belt is all nice and lined up, and once everything is in position, then we'll pull the grenade pin on the tensioner, rotate the Allen until our little post is lined up with our fork there, and at that point we'll then tighten the tensioner down. We've had to raise and lower this engine on the jack quite a few times, so don't be alarmed if you have to do the same.
Yep, that's going to clear that grenade pin. There you go. So there's plenty of tension on the tensioner to where it allows you to get the belt down there, it looks like, and still maneuver it.
Yeah, with the bolt in, we can still rotate it as needed.
Right. Okay, so Paul has got the belt routed and on. Paul, why don't you just give a little few tips on getting the belt on and what you had to do to make sure and get it on accurately, then you double check your marks down there on the crank.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of play with this belt, and you want to route it in a particular way getting started. I went down from the crank and gradually worked my way up, first past the idler and then over the intake cam, then the exhaust cam, and finally I was able to slip it over the tensioner here. Make sure the tensioner is all the way in its slackened position. You can rotate it a little bit here to make sure it's as far away from the belt as possible to aid in slipping the belt over it. You may have to rock the crank down low, back and forth very slightly. Just to make sure once the belt is back on that your mark down below lines up and that it's fully seated on all of the teeth here. I had a fun time with the lip on the intake cam here. It kind of hides where the belt is fully seated in the teeth, but keep playing with it and eventually you'll get it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you can see here, obviously the belt's got the grooves in it that go into the gears, especially around the camshaft and down on the crank. And like Paul said, when he went down below, he just rocked the crank back and forth really slow to make sure that the teeth were engaged. And then he double checked all of the marks down below and made sure that they were back in place. So now that the belt's securely on, Paul, good job with that. Now the fun part is taking out the pin on the grenade on the tensioner and then making sure and tightening down the bolt the rest of the way and clocking it in the right position so you can move forward.
Here's the old tensioner, so I can show you what we're about to do on the car here. That grenade pin I just pulled goes through here. There's a spring-loaded alignment mechanism in there that keeps the belt under tension. And these notches here are supposed to line up at room temperature, which is why it's critical to do this job at room temperature. Things expand and contract with heat and cold. So what we're going to do with this on the car, we will rotate this Allen, which will gradually line this up on the car. That'll indicate our correct belt tension. And once those notches are aligned after we've rotated this on the car, we will tighten the center bolt down. It's tough to see with the belt in the way, but at about the angle where the camera is now, you can just make out the alignment tabs on the tensioner, the forward one that rotates and the rear one against the side of the block there. You may also have good luck reaching behind with a finger and feeling when the two come into alignment. I'm using an Allen here to hold it in the right position, and with my torque wrench at 18 pound-feet, I will cinch this one down.
Torque setting. Click. 18.
As an extra little bit of sanity check, before we remove our cam lock tool, I am going to put some tiny little marks on both the intake and exhaust cam, and matching marks on the cover here. Like any other timing belt job, we'll do our rotate the engine over twice and make sure all of our marks up here and down at the bottom, our little alignment tab on the cam gear and on the plastic cover all line up. Loosen the bolts in the cam gears, and then remove our tensioner tool.
Yeah, now that everything's on, now it's safe to go ahead and remove the actual tool holding the cam gears in place. Okay, so Paul's down below on the passenger side footwell, and he went ahead and used the old crank bolt that threaded through the harmonic balancer into the end of the crank there, so that way he can get a wrench on it. And he's turning over the motor. He's watching the crank position turn over a couple times. Usually you want to do 2 full rotations if you can.
Right. We are coming up on our second rotation. Down here, as I creep up on it, I'm checking out our paint pen alignment mark down here. Again, you don't need to do a paint pen. We have a nice little notch on the cam gear, or the crank gear down here, and matching one on the front main seal cover. We're just trying to line those up. We add a little paint on for visibility. I'll go nice and slow here, using a long-handled wrench for leverage so we can really creep up on it.
All right, so Paul, you're all lined up down there on the crank on the bottom?
Yep.
Okay, now looking at these up top, the marks that he made with the paint pen, or with the marker, are lined up perfect with the timing marks he made on the cover.
They sure are. I'm very happy with that.
Yep. So after doing 2 full rotations, all the marks are lined up, and we feel good about moving forward with buttoning this thing up.
We've backed our old 15mm bolt out of the end of the crank. The timing belt kit comes with new bolts. We've got our 4 10mm triple squares plus a new 15mm center bolt. Now we have verified that the timing belt is correct, we will put the harmonic balancer back on. Remember our old friend, the harmonic balancer counter hold? We've got our 4 outside triple squares in down there. We'll put our counter hold tool back in to hold the harmonic balancer steady while we put all of the bolts in down there and tighten them to spec. We've got our counter hold in place up there to hold everything steady while we tighten this down. We're gonna do these outer ones at 20 Newton meters or 15 pound-feet to start, and then another 90 degrees. These are torque to yield bolts, so it's important that you use the new ones that came in the timing belt kit. There's our 20.
Okay.
Degrees. Degrees. We've done the 4 outer triple squares. We're going to do the inner 15mm, which also has an angle spec and a torque spec on it. This one's 110 Newton meters or 80 pound-feet. And once you're done with that, another 90 degrees.
Click. Another 90.
This is a pretty heavy-duty bolt, so we're using a heavy-duty breaker bar.
Give it its last 90 degrees. Nice. Yep.
There we go.
You got it. That's good. Now that Paul's got the harmonic balancer all buttoned up and everything's torqued to spec, he can remove the crank lock tool that came in the kit out of the way, and we'll get going on replacing all of the Serpentine belt idler position parts, so we can getting closer to finishing this thing up.
Timing cover goes back into place now. We've got our T30s here and here, along with little locking tabs, 2 up top and 1 around the back side. We want to make sure this slots down with these 2 alignment tabs down into the lower part of the timing cover there. Alright, we've got our timing cover in place, down low, and with our locking tabs here and 1 on the back out of view. Now we just have these 2 T30s here, and we can start putting the belt drive stuff back on.
Right, so we got a Serpentine belt kit that is available on the website. I'll go and show we got the tension around the idler pulley, correct for that?
Yes, this is specific for T8 applications. On the T8s, the belt only drives the supercharger in the back. T5s and T6s have slightly different belt drive, but since you have to remove it all to do the timing belt, now is a really great time to replace it.
Right. So this might look a little bit different on your application, right? If they do have a T6 or something else other than a T8. So just make note of that in the video, but these ones are specific for T8, so we're moving forward with that.
All right, as I mentioned, we've got all new accessory belt drive components here. It's kind of tight access down there, so you're going to want to do the tensioner down low first, and then the idler up high. The torque on these bolts is 24 Newton meters or 18 pound-feet. All right, we've got our tensioner and idler in place now. We started with the tensioner since it's down low and kind of hard to get to. Did the idler after that. The tensioner is a new tensioner, so it's got a new grenade pin in it. It's holding it in the slack position, so we should be able to get the belt in, and once it's in the correct routing, we'll pull the pin and it will cinch it down.
So Paul's got the belt routed. One last step with the Serp belt, or the accessory belt.
Our tensioner pin. It'll take some wiggling, but ought to come out.
Got the pin out. Nice job.
We've got the belt drive all buttoned up now, so we're putting the motor mount back in. Lower motor mount, bracket on top, then the upper torque mount. Starting down low. Throughout this process, we've been raising the motor up and down to get access up high and down low. You may find, now that we're at the stage of putting the motor mount bracket in, with the motor mount bolt here and the engine block bolts here, you need to play with the position of the engine a little bit more to get it all to line up. We've raised the motor a little bit just to get the surface under the motor mount here and under the engine block there all nice and even. I'm starting with the engine mount, engine block bolts. I'll hand thread these to get them started and then go for our big motor mount bolt. Make sure you don't forget the tiny little ground here and this tiny little bolt.
Yep. Another thing, really, you can see how this is lined up flush with this bracket, and this is resting on the motor mount, so that's a good indicator, so you won't put too much stress on getting these started. So when you lift up the engine back, it all lines up and looks good. So Paul's going to get that all tightened down.
Okay. Well, this is probably worth mentioning. There is, for whatever reason, a little tiny O-ring that goes in there.
Okay, got it.
All right, we've got the upper engine mount bracket in place and are putting the torque mount back into place now. Remember the little tiny mass balance on there. Once we've got this all buttoned up, we will get back underneath and put the fender liner back in. Wheel back on, belly pan back on underneath, car back down on the ground. All that's left now is to start it. We hope this video has been very helpful. Thanks very much for watching.